follow the supervisors. ahead and move on to discussion item number 13, the resolution in support of Governor Gavin Newsom's right to safety amendment and call for constitutional convention. I'm going to open it up for the public comment, and then we'll come back for my colleague to speak on the item.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 17 requests to speak on this item, 8 in person and 9 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 1 e-comment in opposition. For any members of the public that requested to speak on item 13 by phone, please dial in to the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition of this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward the following individuals. Mark, Michael Brando, Truth, Mike Borrello, Consuelo, Paul DeBold, Bryant Rumbaugh, and Gambler. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record. You're welcome to come forward in any order.
Mark, obviously governments disarm their enemies and arm their allies, and now they are trying to disarm you, the U.S. population. Disarm us at a time when government has left our borders open and the Mexican cartel, Chinese nationals, and sleeper cells from Iran and many other countries are invading. Our U.S. intel warns of growing terror threats. 250 people on terror watch lists got in. History is clear that tyrants disarm the people they intend to oppress, meaning you. In this YouTube video title, at 15 minutes, Nora states that she is committed to removing all barriers on our southern border. At 1 hour, 22 minutes, 50 seconds, Nora leads Sandag in plans restricting your driving. It was not because of our military, Admiral Yamamoto didn't attack the U.S. Our tiny military has 2 million soldiers. It was because we have 170 well-armed citizens that can shoot accurately at great distances. Traitors Newsom, Vargas, and Reamer will try to take away all citizens' best rifles, making us unarmed, sitting ducks, just as Ukraine and Israel were. And I'm asking you not to join them in disarming your people, Monica Stepp. The EU made Europe nice while they signed all control over to foreign unelected councils and disarmed them, just like this board is doing. Now, European protesters are hit with tear gas and rubber bullets since they no longer have any say in their tyrannical government. 1 out of 115 people die from something in the U.S. every year, and all the tragic victims of gun violence add up to less than 1 out of 8,500. To disarm Americans over 0.01% is asinine. You are tax slaves to a government in the final stages of your total domination by disarming you. Smart lights with license plate readers, 5G radiation, and finally, a universal digital ID, exactly like China uses, and the EU is forcing now. Inflation is rising as they steal everything from you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. Paul Bold. Here we go, another sick resolution introduced again and again. Another step towards restricting our due process, free speech, banning guns, assault knives, assault garden shears. Mankind will always be inventive when it comes to assault. You should not support a constitutional convention for what you could do by circulating a single amendment among the states. Moreover, I find the gun safety arguments specious. There are no rules for a constitutional convention. The people convening to rewrite our Constitution could be totally unelected and unaccountable. There is nothing that could limit the convention to a single issue, so that the delegates could write amendments that revoke any of our rights, like our right to peaceful protest, our right to freedom of religion, or our right to privacy. There are also no rules preventing corporations from pouring money into the convention to ensure they get their way. but extremists and wealthy special interests see it as their best chance to write their far-right agenda into the Constitution, or far left, by the way. This is why they're working around the clock to convince their allies in state legislatures to make it happen. Moreover, the statement that this action would leave the Second Amendment unchanged is disingenuous. Of course it is a separate amendment, but it affects the Second Amendment and a few others too. It is best left out of future remarks on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
It's Truth ready to blast this item again with multiple truth bombs. If people can't even sue Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, or Merck for clot shot deaths, then why would anyone be able to sue a firearms manufacturer for a death a random person caused? A constitutional convention went, well, only one time in American history. It was 1787, regarding the Articles of Convention, our first government. They were put up on the chopping block in closed session without public input. Most participants didn't even know they would change our system of government. That's how serious a con is. With a disunified people who no longer know their rights, and with open traitors in government, Tara, if a con happened today, everyone here knows what would happen to every single right we have. The difference then was people with intelligence and history and content of character. We don't have much of that anymore. What we have today are minions like Tara, Monica, Blakespeare, Bonta, Mara, Marnie, Sarah Jacobs, Mike Levin, the Bradyers, and New Scum, who want to throw everyone's rights into the garbage just so they can maybe achieve a personal political agenda to disarm the American people. Co-conspirator minions and multiple violations of the oaths they claim to have taken to the Constitution.
As we take away guns, I just want to object to one thing, being called a minion.
If it wasn't for the Bill of Rights added at the very end of the first con by very wise people, none of us would even be here right now. There was never such a thing as a right to safety because freedom is dangerous. If you have a right to prison if you want to strip away anyone's rights. And simple question. Why does government keep getting more and more violent assault weapons, including machine guns, while they expect the average person to keep tolerating less and less weapons of self-defense? Who hurts the most from expensive fees and time-consuming regulations on firearms? Poor people. And the official story is that's most often people of color. So that means these gun reduction agenda proposals are actually racist and without common sense. And by the way, Tara, common sense is 2 words, not 1. Spell check on sentence 3 of the 3rd paragraph.
Next speaker, please.
All right, still Brian Rumbaugh. So, the Second Amendment. Let's quick just recite it. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. We do need to just understand the history of our country, the history of really this world. Tyrannical governments have existed. In America, we had the opportunity to pretty much not live under the oppressive fist of a dictatorship, a despotic governor. Now we have essentially what the filling in the blank government that is infringing upon those Bill of Rights. The enumerated powers of the government are enumerated. They are simply allotted to by the people. Now, unfortunately, the people have been out to lunch on the sidelines for so long, and this is why you guys are having to deal with this. I'm not going to call it abuse. You chose to be in this position. For anybody to sit here and pretend like this is a well-oiled machine, half the people that show up in this thing are county employees, okay? We are part of a system that is really at the tail end. We all really do need to recognize that, because we are capable of a lot more. Now, what I can tell you, once the citizenry does get back into its position, we are going to see changes, okay? When it comes to our rights, our God-given rights, unalienable rights, we need to understand government cannot obviously take those away. So when it comes to, I just have so much to say, I swear I do. And this 2 minutes, it just kills me. I am damn near the only person that's come in here with innovative thoughts as far as I can tell. That's the God honest truth.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mike Barolo. God bless you, Andrew. Claim gun violence is the leading cause of premature death in the United States. False. In the United States, there is no single universally accepted definition of a premature death. But by average life expectancy of 78.6 years old, assault by other and unspecified firearm discharge as an underlying cause of death numbers 19 in the list at 4.1% of all deaths between 2018 to present. This is a fact. Claim the state of California leads the nation with a lower gun death rate. It was the 7th lowest in the nation. Again, false. According to CDC provisional mortality statistics, 2018 to present, California has the second highest mortality rate due to firearms, just below Texas. California comprises 7.4% of deaths in the nation due to firearms. Newsom attributes these lies primarily due to the common sense gun safety laws that are in place and common sense gun safety measures. These include mandated universal background checks would be required, already a law. A reasonable waiting period would be instituted, already a law. Civilian purchase of assault weapons would be barred. California defines an assault weapon if the magazine holds more than 10 rounds. Presently, my city has been infiltrated by gangs burglarizing homes. What CDC failed to stratify in their data is how many of that 4.1% were law-abiding citizens trying to protect their family and their homes, or how many were criminals rightfully stopped by peaceful citizens. Newsom's 28th Amendment is not only unconstitutional, but also dangerous.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Criminals are not aware of amendments. Consuelo. So I wrote a little poem for this item. It's called "We've Learned from History That We Haven't Learned from History." Most people with power are total cowards. They live in constant fear of losing their job, their title, or their lifestyle. This is true in everything from governments to large corporations and even online influencers. Being liked becomes more important than doing what's right. To say humans can't exist without governments is to say animals can't exist without farms. 0% of me believes the government. Don't say we didn't warn you. The globalists are taking over the world right now. There will be a one world government where the elites rule over the people directly and their belief system. If you have a doctor's degree, master's degree, or whatever degree you have just memorized somebody else's thoughts. That's why some schools are more expensive than others, and there is no private bank that will finance someone else's thoughts. Only the government will do that, because that is where your control starts, because you can't think for yourself. Take back your inalienable rights, people.
Next speaker, please.
Gambler here. Now we're going over this resolution trying to take our guns from a dude who clearly cheated to stay in office. And the county helped him do that. I find that disgusting, utterly disgusting. And now you want to take away our guns based off of that? Now, I'm not a big gun person. I'm 6 foot, 280 pounds or something. I'm not too worried about someone mugging me, doing anything like that. But you guys, you, Michael Vu, I wouldn't, if I were to come after you, you would need some kind of equalizer. They're not going to be around you all the time. I'm not saying I'm threatening you or anything like that. I'm just saying the great equalizer is a gun. You do want to take that away from us? Go ahead. See what ends up happening. You have people like me pushing around forcing our ways around everything. If we don't like something, we'll just push you out of the way and take it from you. If that's the society you want us to live in, where then all of a sudden you have a bunch of friggin' stabbings all over the place, bombings happening all over the place because they don't have a different way and no one could go ahead and stop someone from doing this shit. I like the fact that my next door neighbor may have a gun. That way if some fucking crazy lunatic comes into my complex with a gun, that I'm hoping that they would take care of that person. That I don't have to rely on these stupid idiots that don't do shit for us at all. Look, I came in here in 5 minutes, the sheriff pulled me out of here. 5 minutes, came in here, asked the media department a question. As I'm asking him a question, the sheriff came out there and escorted me off and saying, I was asked to leave. No one asked me to leave except for the sheriff. What, because they have guns? I'm supposed to obey them?
Final call from Michael Brando. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Good afternoon. Oliver Twist here in strong opposition to this item. As expected, this item demonstrates that you are indeed using the county's recent gun violence reduction workshops to further your predetermined agenda for your anti-gun narrative. I attended one of those workshops where there was a robust call by attendees for holding lawbreakers accountable without the continued push to increasingly infringe on the rights of law-abiding citizens, and yet those common sense ideas did not seem to make it into your report. County residents would be far better served by having supervisors who advocate for enforcing existing laws, prosecuting criminals to the full extent of the law, as well as advocating that felons with serious crimes to serve their entire sentences. Two recent examples. Number one, the recent road rage murder of a 4-year-old in Lancaster, California. The suspect had a lengthy criminal record with prior plea deals, which resulted in him being on the streets. Number two, the 20-year-old who was running a 3D gun manufacturing lab out of an RV in Escondido, originally charged with 28 felonies. He was allowed to plea down to a single charge, reduced to a 1-year jail sentence, 2 years probation. We need far more emphasis on tough sentencing for root cause suspects, those found to be illegally putting guns on our streets. We do not need a constitutional convention or more laws that target law-abiding citizens. Effective gun violence prevention starts with enforcing existing laws and keeping violent criminals off of our streets for the full extent of their sentences. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Pam, 13, no. It is baffling to hear the fervent support by Tara and Nora to eliminate more and more unborn babies through violent abortion, and then to hear Tara and Nora want to support child care and then argue against gun violence, especially of children. How does one square in their mind which human beings are worthy of living and which should be eliminated through violent abortion? Criminals don't care about gun laws. I attended Tara's Gun Violence Reduction Summit. There was very little discussion about criminal access to guns or enforcement of current laws, or even increasing punishment for crimes committed with guns. There was no emphasis on deterring criminal activity. The focus of this constitutional convention put forth by the occupier of the state capitol is to prevent access to guns by the citizenry. California and New Jersey are the states that have the strictest gun laws in the nation. Research reveals guns killed 4,357 children ages 1 to 19 in the United States in 2020. Roe v. Wade killed 60 million American babies. Currently in the U.S., abortion kills more than 2,500 unborn babies each day. When the weak and vulnerable are not protected by those who are stronger, when human life is devalued by elected officials and other adults, then of course there will be violence. The citizens are protected by the Second Amendment in order to defend themselves against such violence, as well as any unjust, unconstitutional laws perpetrated by government. This is not just a gun issue, this is a moral issue, and morality is lacking in some individuals on this board and society. Speaking of morality, character and integrity instead of skin color, always. Racism viewed by any individual, regardless of skin color, is evil, more so when an individual is employed by government and paid by taxpayers.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Robert, 13, no. I identify as a white man. If I have to do this to make everything fair, right? A tyrant could potentially use this to further restrict and control access to firearms in a way that suppresses the citizen. Age restrictions, by raising the minimum age to purchase firearms to 21, a tyrant could limit the access to firearms for a significant portion of the population, thereby reducing the number of potential armed individuals who could oppose their rule. Universal background checks. This could provide the government with extensive records and control over who is purchasing firearms, potentially leading to the ability to deny certain individuals the right to obtain firearms on arbitrary grounds. Ban on citizens' purchase of assault weapons. This could significantly diminish the population's access to firearms that are generally considered more effective for self-defense or resistance against potential tyrannical forces. But seeing that I'm talking to a bunch of tyrants who agree with tyrannical rules, I wonder, what oath did you all take? Did you take an oath to serve our country and serve us? Or did you take an oath to the evilness of which we now see, where dictators come out of everywhere to tell us what our rights are and how they're going to enforce it on us? I remove my consent. You all need to honor your oath. Speak up, or we know what side you stand on.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, this is Bill Teeter. I live in Encinitas, and I share a lot of the concerns with gun violence. I think everybody does. But reading through this proposal for a national convention, if you want to change the Constitution, you need to build national consensus. And this one seems to be written, and it's only 3 pages long, to actually be more divisive. It says, we want these 4 restrictions. And in the past, constitutional amendments have been expansion of rights. You shall not prohibit, you shall not abridge. This one has 4 restrictions. They're not expanding any rights. So it's set up to fail. It seems like it's a campaign talking point. See what we did, but it's not really going to accomplish anything. I think most people would look at the Second Amendment and in the Federalist Papers, they explain why it's there. Some of those things don't apply anymore. And you could have a national conversation about what we should do so the states can convicting. But to say that everybody should do what California wants to do, it's just designed to get not approved. What makes common sense restrictions in the streets of San Francisco may be nonsense in the savannas of South Dakota. So I urge the board to vote no, and maybe that'll put pressure on Sacramento, actually produce a proposal that has some chance of changing the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Just a reminder, you guys can't take our rights that were given to us by our Creator, by God, and turn them into privileges. Only the people are sovereign and have rights. Bureaucrats in their capacity are not sovereign and have no rights. They have the authority given by the people and are subject to the statutes. The state cannot diminish the rights of the people. The assertion of the federal rights, the Bill of Rights, when plainly and reasonably made, is not to be defeated under the name of local practice. Where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. There can be no sanction or penalty imposed upon one because of this exercise of constitutional rights. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. To deprive the people of their sovereignty is at first necessary to get the people to agree to submit to the authority of the entity they have created. It is the state. If the state converts a right into a privilege, the citizens can ignore the license and fee. What you guys are doing is abrogating your oath. You are sitting here and coming up against the people. The Second Amendment backs up the First. Nothing that you are doing is giving people their rights. You double speak all the time, when in fact all you're doing is taking the rights and expecting us to rely upon the people that are actually coming after us, which is the San Diego cabal, which would involve the sheriff department, the police department, and you guys, and any authority making any decisions on the people's behalf, which you should not be doing because you don't have the authority to do it. You are not doing what is in line with the people and what they want. You are doing what is in line with a globalist agenda that is set out to kill, steal, and destroy. So you don't have the authority to do this. You never have. Don't pretend like you're giving people more rights when you're actually taking them away, acting like they're a privilege that you can seemingly give back at any cost. It's time for you guys to understand that the law is the common law of the land, and that is made by our Creator, not by you guys. You have no authority to be doing what you are doing. And this is exactly why the people need the Second Amendment, so that they can protect themselves. Because we come to a sheriff, and you know what they do? They beat you up and then exonerate themselves. So there is no protection when you go to seek it from them. They want to be the ones with the weapons and make sure that people have nothing to protect themselves.
Thank you. And for the record, that speaker was Audra. Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Thank you so much. Our county has taken significant steps to reduce gun violence in our neighborhoods. Since 2021, 4 times more ghost guns have been taken off the streets than in previous years, in the previous 3 years combined. 200 ghost gun cases involving murder, attempted murder, and assault were prosecuted by our district attorney in the last 3 years. We have recently required trigger locks on guns and put our county council in a position to take action against reckless profiteering gun manufacturers. So I now would like to ask my colleagues to join with me in putting our county's full support behind Governor Gavin Newsom's Right to Safety Amendment. The Right to Safety Amendment preserves the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and ensures the people's elected representatives can determine what gun safety laws are appropriate for their communities and enshrines fundamental, broadly supported gun safety measures into laws. Okay, sorry.
It's just somebody's disturbing the whole conversation, and I'm trying to figure out how to address this. But go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. We'd enshrine fundamental, broadly supported gun safety measures into law, including raising the minimum age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, mandating universal background checks, instituting a waiting period for all gun purchases, banning the sale of assault weapons and other weapons of war to civilians, so these could not be sold to civilians. So today I am reintroducing a resolution to support the Right to Safety Amendment. Passing this resolution will reinforce our values and commitment to doing whatever it takes to keep our residents safe. So with that, I would like to make a motion for this item and ask my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Happy to second the motion, Supervisor, Vice Chair. I think that, we continue to hear from folks that they're calling for common sense gun reform while actively defending the Second Amendment right. And so our board continues to be committed to creating safe and equitable communities by ensuring that we focus on preventive measures that are taken into consideration and action and implemented. And we have successfully made ghost guns illegal. Our social workers are trained and readily equipped and prepared to identify signs of potential gun violence while consistently addressing loopholes in our county. And so we hear stories over and over again of, we get to this place of thoughts and prayers, but I think it's an opportunity for us to take a stand and do the right thing. And so I'm happy to support this action to adopt a resolution in support of Governor Newsom's Right to a Safety Amendment, and I thank you for bringing this forth. Please, Pablo.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Wait a minute, Chair? Sorry. Can I say something before we vote?
Of course. I just didn't see you. I'm sorry?
Mike's not.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Maybe you could just raise your hand if you want to speak on an issue, because I don't know, or you want to text me? That would be easy. Whatever you want. Okay, just raise your voice.
Yeah, we'll figure this out. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I just, background checks are already required. There's already limits on gun magazines. Ghost guns are already illegal. This doesn't change anything for California. It doesn't change anything for the county of San Diego. This is basically up to the other states whether they want to adopt this or not, if there's ever a constitutional amendment made. But I keep bringing this back. This resolution and these gun, restrictions fail to address the fact we're dealing with mental health crisis. When it's not a gun problem or a weapon problem, or knives or cars or ropes or pillows or plastic bags, or it's not a weapon problem. All heinous killings and crimes have one thing in common: mental health or mental illness. They all have that. All these heinous crimes that throughout the country that do happen, unfortunately, with guns, about every one of these people has a mental health crisis. It's estimated that 1 in 5 adults in the United States live with mental illness. Last year, the UT Union Tribune reported that the rate in which adults were placed on a 72-hour mental health hold has almost doubled. For kids, the number has increased nearly tenfold. Mental health calls for service to law enforcement has spiked by more than 120% since 2009. And we conducted the San Diego Gun Violence Reduction Community Needs Assessment. And out of that, we found that 70%, the largest by far amount of gun-related deaths in San Diego County, were suicide. This highlights that we've got a lot of more work to do on mental health crises. There are devastating crimes by mentally ill people, during gun shootings and mass shootings, and these are horrific. And we should put an end to them, but they're always done by somebody that's mentally unstable. We received a report back from the staff about suicide prevention. They're doing some great things, and there's a lot more work to do. I think California's already got the most restrictive gun laws in the state. We should enforce them. Ghost guns are already illegal. So those types of things, I don't think that we really should be putting the emphasis here on taking away guns from people. I can't support you. I think mental health is the focus, not this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll restart the vote. Roll call. Supervisor Anderson?
No.
Supervisor Montgomery Steppe?
Yes.
Supervisor Desmond?
No.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer?
Yes.
Chairwoman Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
That motion passes with Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item number 14, resolution in support of Proposition 1, rebuilding California's mental health care system. I'm going to turn it over to our public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 20 requests to speak on this item, 10 in person and 10 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 7 e-comments, 3 in favor and 4 in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 14 by phone, please dial in to the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in favor of this item. As your name is called, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'd like to invite Crystal Irving, Dion Akers, and Joshua Bohannon. I've called your name. Please come forward. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Supervisors, Chair Vargas. Thank you again for having me here today. I'm Dion Akers here on behalf of San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria to express our support for item 14, a resolution in support of Proposition 1. Sadly, as we all know, far too many of our neighbors have fallen into homelessness, addiction, and despair due in part to a decades-long failing to properly invest in facilities and services to support those facing the most severe mental health and substance abuse challenges. New programs like conservatorship reform and SB 43 and Care Court underscore the need for facilities to provide behavioral health treatment. Fortunately, this year we have the opportunity to address this need by supporting Proposition 1. This initiative will generate the funding necessary to add more than 11,000 new behavioral health treatment beds, provide critical funding to house veterans with behavioral health challenges, and modernize the Mental Health Services Act to provide ongoing funding for mental health housing. Under Mayor Gloria's leadership, the city supported this legislation and put Proposition 1 on the ballot and negotiated the language to increase the number of beds this bond will be able to fund. Earlier this month, our San Diego City Council unanimously voted to support Proposition 1, and we look forward to the County Board of Supervisors joining our city in supporting this proposition. I urge the Board of Supervisors to approve this action and thank Supervisor Lawson-Remer for bringing it forward for consideration today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Board of Supervisors, Josh Bohannon with Father Joe's Villages, and we are here today in support of this item. Behavioral health, as we all know, is a serious issue that California is facing, but our community experiencing homelessness have their own challenges. So there is a myth out there that the root cause of homelessness is behavioral health, and that's not true. But people experiencing homelessness will face traumas every day. They'll be preyed upon, attacked, and just living on the street is in itself challenging and traumatic. So individuals might turn to substance use, or they might develop their own mental health challenges in response to that trauma. So unless we're able to provide housing to these individuals, a stable place for them to recover after that acute care, they need these step-down services, and the street is not the right place for them to be. So we're excited for the bond measure. We're excited for the potential to build more beds in the region, and by building a more stable, safe place for people to recover, we can really help break that cycle of homelessness that this community experiences. So we're in support. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite the speakers in opposition: Michael Brando, Truth, Mark, Consuelo, Paul the Bold, Bryant Rumbaugh, and Gambler. If I've called your name, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Crystal Irving, president of SEIU Local 221, and I also stand before you as a member of SEIU California, representing over 700,000 workers across the state. I want to thank Vice Chair Lawson-Remer and Chair Vargas for bringing forward this resolution today, because it's time to do what's right and take care of the people who are suffering from mental health problems in our streets. SEIU members are on the front lines of mental health crisis. Our dedicated members show up every day, determined to rebuild trust and deliver compassion to people who have suffered too much cruelty. Yet, more often than not, our workers find their hands tied by siloed systems and bureaucratic barriers in the way of bringing people who are hungry, sick, and experiencing trauma into safety. People in crisis should not have to wait weeks, months, or years to get the help they need. And like so many other public health crises, untreated mental illness and addiction disproportionately harms communities of color. People caught in a cycle of poverty and addiction, often compounded by systemic racism, deserve a chance at recovery, not incarceration. Prop 1 will expand community mental health and addiction services and build supportive housing needed to transform the lives of thousands of people on the streets, and as well as build the workforce we need to get people into quality care more quickly and empower frontline workers to craft solutions based on their expertise. People in behavioral health crisis deserve treatment and not tents. SEIU members are proud to be on the front lines of care, and that is why we urge the Board of Supervisors to pass this resolution, and we will work to ensure that Prop 1 passes on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Consuelo. There's no resolution to support rebuilding California anything. Get real. The real mental health issue happening is the people who continue to put their faith and keep voting for the puppets in DC, Sacramento, and locally. 125 years ago, you didn't have to ask permission from government to collect rainwater, go fishing, own property, start a business, renovate your home, build a home, use transportation, a vehicle, get married, hunt, own a weapon, cut hair, sell a product, protest, grow food in your own on your own property, set up a lemonade stand, sell food. You can do virtually nothing without being extorted by government and obtaining their permission first. If you still think you're free, you're deluding yourself. You live in a tax farm as free-range humans. The bankers will make sure that we remain in debt. The pharmaceutical companies will make sure that we stay sick. The arms manufacturers will ensure that we continue to go to war. The media will make sure that we are prevented from learning the truth. And the government will ensure that all this can happen legally. Those who are asleep focus on the puppets. Those who are awake focus on the ones pulling the strings. Reminder, a single bee is ignored, but when a million come together, even the bravest run in fear. Even the bravest run in fear. The one thing the government fears is the day that we all stand together.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
No guidelines? Okay, it's truth. The county has zero business politicking with taxpayer money for what they want voters to pass. Also because mental illness affects at least 1 in 5 people in government. Some of the most severe cases of mental illness of career politicians can result in suicide or death of the country and our Republican form of government. Those are real facts with a blue check. Also, seriously, overdose deaths in the county nearly doubled since 2018 because of the lockdowns you supervisors implemented. So you guys are responsible. You should personally foot the bill for this bill, Tara. Quit using taxpayer money to make up for wasting taxpayer money on decisions that hurt taxpayers with taxpayer money, and then asking again and again for more taxpayer money. Got a song for you.
My blood like a leech, you break the law and you preach, taking all my money and you want more.
That's Queen. Don't you want to hear more? All right, more resources will not help unwind the decades of poor decision-making. These statistics indeed reflect a system that does not respond to the needs of our residents. I don't want to see people thrown into junk quality tents. I don't want to see people swept when they just come right back or move to an adjacent street. I don't want to see harm reintroduction programs that enable addiction. I don't want people in their possessions to be taken into state custody like prisoners, making San Diego a cohort 1 county. It actually sounds conspiratorial. I want government to stop making housing unaffordable with census regulations and fees to build single-family homes and to open businesses, which results in expensive homes, job cuts, and food and operation prices soaring. Most of all, I want people in government to stop trying to politic for 1 billion more laws. I want treatment, not totalitarianism. Treatment for those who want it and are ready, with absolutely no new taxes or money shuffling pushed by politicians who've only exacerbated these problems, and now want Prop 1 to shuffle homeless people around in order to make it look like they actually solved the problem.
Next speaker, please.
Mark, your agenda item stated mental illness affects 1 in 5 people in the United States, end quote. You have just indicted yourselves as the largest government failure ever to be. Mental health records in NICS increased 1,491% over the past decade. Let me repeat that. Mental health records in NICS increased 1,491% over the past decade. Your agenda item states, by January 1st, 2025, we must launch SB 43, reforms to conservatorship. This government caused homelessness through inflation. This government is going to make it so they can legally control people's property against their will and steal it to pay for their profitable mental health care system, where their CEOs, consultants, contractors, and the banks make exorbitant salaries while inflation leaves your families in poverty. Do you think this is an accident? Demoralizing and destabilizing were 2 main points Yuri Bezmenov warned us about in the takeover of our government. And destroying our businesses during COVID is an incredible stress known to trigger mental health problems. The only surprising thing is that our citizens have not caught on and stopped you yet. These supervisors are funding more healthcare stooges for the pharmaceutical industry to drug more Americans who they, the supervisors, have stressed out and left in poverty with their UN Agenda 21 policies. Do you think that is an accident? Nothing in government is an accident. Every war has been planned, and you are the pawns they don't care about. 1 out of 5 is an absolute emergency, and everyone in this government should be fired if that figure is real. Nothing in government is an accident. 1 out of 5 is an absolute emergency, and everyone in this government should be fired if that figure is real. You need to see these videos on YouTube, from the top one, from 6 minutes, 40 seconds to 24 minutes, to see what a total scam this government is.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Paula Bold, must be political seasoned, I assume politicians telling people how to vote. We can make up our own minds, thank you. I don't know if you can call it gaslighting, but I would rather read the state legislative analyst summary of the ballot proposition than a skimpy summary by an interested party. It should be in the agenda documentation. One warning sign to me is the building supportive housing in the board letter. By the time you build a housing, the patient will have gone crazy or died. And Proposition 1's text in the voter pamphlet goes from Section 1 to 2 to 14 to 116 back to 4. Call it selective recall or maybe selective manipulation. Proposition 1 would apparently shift 10% of county money for behavioral health programs to the state, take away from youth mental health and suicide prevention, and do nothing to increase funding for actual mental health service. And we'd all be paying for financing costs after the bonds are issued, possibly $10 billion. And how much are we getting? The entire measure is $6.38 billion. Measured by our share of the population, we get $0.54 billion, like $500 million, not the $1 billion mentioned in the agenda. Big difference. It would fund a small fraction of the projects listed in the agenda. Please be careful with county money now that you've done so much for mental health. Don't blow it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
All right, still Brian Rumbaugh. So, this is my last time here at the podium today. I appreciate it. One thing I will say, when Brando was talking about he called it the homeless industrial complex. That was kind of the comic relief for me for the point of today. We've obviously seen the mental health industrial complex, let's just call it the pharmaceutical industrial complex. We got a lot of things to fix. We all kind of really need to be aware of that. Okay. When it comes to this Proposition 1 and my ability to come here, I do appreciate it because the path forward is really the Republican form of government. That's Republican form of government is critical because it not only essentially requires responsibility, but it provides that opportunity. It provides that, as the marketplace of ideas. And, moving forward, if we really want to make a change in society, we really have to kind of, just like an alcoholic going to whatever, the 12-step program, the first thing they got to do is admit that they're an alcoholic. We have to get to that point because what it is we're doing really isn't necessarily working. Everything, like I said, is relative. You get people that have, the inflation's killing them, the price of everything's killing them. We're not getting anywhere. What needs to happen, I'm going to spit this out here real quick. The citizens need to provide a platform where you, as elected representatives, pretty much campaign on. Take the money out of campaigns. It needs to give you guys the ability to have become a responsive government. Okay, because right now, when you just passed that con thing, I got to tell you something. That's a dangerous to go down that road.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Gambler here. Why are we in the situation we're in? What changed all of a sudden that made our rent double by pushing the elderly out of their housing, making all the costs get way out of control, forcing you guys to come up with a bunch of stupid-ass ideas to bail us out of it? What changed? You guys stop listening to us? You stop giving a shit about what we have to say? I definitely understand that changed. Nora constantly wants to reduce the time that we have to talk down to 1 minute. Oh, no, Tara is just the scapegoat. The original mission was from Nora. She just gave it to Tara so she could take the fall for it because Tara's an idiot like that. But it's okay. It's completely understandable that you guys don't belong there. You guys are playing SimCity that you don't even know how to play. You take your elder, someone else's game and you go, oh, yay, it's so perfect. Let me go ahead and add these things. And then all of a sudden, prices double within 3 years. Why? Because you don't have to listen to us anymore. Why? Because you're not going to get kicked out because ACLU is going to bail you out and keep you in office. End of story. Unless if someone like me goes around and tells every single person to collect as many unused ballots as humanly possible, vote them for the person that you do, vote against the Nora, Tara, and Joel, and kick their asses out, and let's get someone else in here that maybe, possibly, will listen to us. I mean, that is an option. We could play the same game ACLU plays to get you guys in office, to get you out.
Final call from Michael Brando. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Justin, this is your first warning. I'm going to ask you to please be civil.
Okay.
That's your first warning. That's your second warning. I need to continue with the caller. So that's your second warning. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Warning, so go ahead and leave the premises. You continue to disturb our meeting with, continuously. I've been giving you as many chances as possible, but I need you to please leave. I will hope you have a wonderful day, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker on the phone, Oliver Twist. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And if you could start my time. Oliver Twist here in strong opposition to this item. This is another measure that would only send San Diego County backwards. Siphoning off local money to shore up supposed oversight for California is a very bad idea and would actually harm San Diego County's efforts to help the most vulnerable populations by shifting funding out of existing local hands. We do not need to go backwards via a significant reduction to local funding or a reduction of critical resources. As one of your e-commenters stated, it is a smoke and mirror money grab, one which would harm local residents. The state doesn't need more money. They need to manage current dollars far more stewardfully. For example, the $31 billion of our hard-earned money that was lost to EDD fraud. No to both item 14 and ACA 1, and a great big absolutely not to any new bond, tax, or progressive dollar grab. Newsom has been a poster child of worst practices, which always involves taxing us more while allowing policies and programs which actually exacerbate problems and foment new ones. San Francisco is a textbook example, and Newsom is a case study in taking bad policies and failing upwards. Please manage our hard-earned dollars far better instead of trying to milk the tax-paying cash cow harder and harder. That will only drive more people out of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Pam, 14, no. Finally, the governor has found the cure for homelessness, affordable housing, and mental health. Spend more money. And the NGOs, unions, and developers are drooling for the cash. The policies by the current governor and his predecessors, as well as the state legislature, have produced and perpetrated these problems. Then introduce the oppressive, abusive, unconstitutional mandates forced on this state and reinforced onto residents of this county by Nathan Fletcher and members of this board, including Monica, when you were on the city council. There was no exit off the insane train, and there definitely was no help from the government of any branch. $1 billion was spent locally on COVID, and people still died. Individuals who will be subjects to Prop 1 will be at the mercy of the government and any requirements and mandates enforced on them to stay in these government programs. Individuals should be held accountable but not robbed of their freedom. Prop 1 is a $6 billion bond that will divert money by raiding funds for mental health treatment. Rich developers are the direct benefactors of these billions as they will build Section 8 government welfare projects. If a problem is solved, then there will be no money in the pockets of the individuals who appear as heroes to those suffering. And finally, I suggest the photo of Nathan Fletcher in the lobby be turned upside down to signify the state of duress he forced on this county, exacerbating these problems.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp, and I'm a public health educator focused on protecting youth against drug use and addiction, especially marijuana use, as it directly impacts mental health. I appreciate this item being brought forward as we must discuss all avenues or revenues that potentially support mental health. Supporting Proposition 1 sounds promising, although I appreciate Supervisor Anderson's opinion paper published today describing the realities and negative impacts it could have, stating supporting this position on a ballot measure could have irrevocable damage to our behavioral health system if passed. He goes on to say if Proposition 1 were to pass, it would require a significant reduction of mental health and behavioral health resources for our youth. We must recognize that this is not the time to pull funds away from our youth as we see intoxicating drugs like marijuana destroy their brains. I would like to share with you an article published in the Wall Street Journal last week titled "More Teens Who Use Marijuana Are Suffering from Psychosis." I'd like to emphasize that the title states psychosis, not depression or anxiety. At children's hospitals, doctors are treating more children developing psychotic disorders from marijuana use. Nearly a third of adolescents they see for checkups say they are using marijuana, and about a third of those children using marijuana report experiencing hallucinations or paranoia. You have to consider what this type of severe mental health disorder will look like for these youth several years down the road, as well as the impact it will have on our county. Our own Dr. Renate Lev, an emergency room physician at Scripps Mercy Hospital, who was quoted in this article in the Wall Street Journal, calls the situation an attack on our brains. I urge you to deny supporting Proposition 1 and dig deeper into the negative consequences of diverting funds away from behavioral health.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
This is an attack on the people. This Proposition 1 is to back up SB 43. Both of them need to go. They are actually null and void, considering that you can't go against the Constitution and take people's right to life and their ability to do what they want in their life. You're institutionalizing people. You're medicating the population to take advantage of the people and their suffering. And you are interchanging behavioral and mental health all the time. And if, in fact, mental illness affects 1 in 5 people, then what does that board have to say to the people for having so many mentally unstable people on the board deciding things that they shouldn't be? And you guys sit here and you want to act like, you know, because you're homeless, you have a mental or behavioral health issue, when in fact you're the reason why people are having all of these issues and having to become homeless. It's not because of that. But when we sit here and we want to medicate people and institutionalize them unwillingly, then, you know, why did the state hospitals get shut down? That's something I need to actually look into, because why would that take place if you had such a need, right? And you need to hire how many workers? 65,000 across the state, but also like 20,000 in the county or more. That's how many people you have working for the county. It's quite ridiculous, because you guys, this is a ploy to take over the people and make sure that you take total control, because you have to take control of all the resources. The people are one of those resources that you want to take control over, and this is the way to do it, by saying that they are mentally unstable. Just like if you don't want your child to not change their sex and cut off their penis or, you know, their breast, you know, you're mentally unstable, so we can take you in, or you can determine that based on whatever it is across the board. And that is very dangerous, and that's what the people need to understand, because they start out with something like this, then they come after all of us. But if you look at their facts and see that 1 in 5 people is mentally unstable, like they're saying, or has a mental illness, And we need to be looking at the board to see exactly who that is, make sure that they don't continue to do this.
Thank you. For the record, the speaker was Audra. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. This is Ann Riddle. I am against this agenda item 14. I feel reluctant to have to choose between homelessness and the mental health problems associated with it and helping them by having more homes, and here in our county, money to help us with mental health issues with our young people. Now, what a choice is that? I wonder sometimes if life should be like that we're choosing one over the other when the issues are so serious. Just yesterday, we received a Wall Street Journal article called Marijuana is More Dangerous Than Health and Human Services at the Federal Lets On. And it talks about the seriousness of youth mental health issues and the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana that's creating these problems used over time. We have an issue here at home. I'm more inclined to think that money spent here at home is probably wiser than money spent at the state level if we want to get to mental health issues. And so I reluctantly have to be against Prop 1 or this agenda item 14. By the way, the staff report was really sketchy and fragmented. I was trying to understand what was going on just from the staff report, and I finally had to Google it to get the extent of the information I needed regarding Prop 1. Probably it would be wiser for all of us if the staff report were redone. Going forward, we really need good information here as citizens. And so let's keep our money at home. Let's use the money for our young people, and let's ensure that the resources for mental health continue to increase and not decrease. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
This is Bill Teeter. I also have reluctantly to oppose this. There's actually two parts. Part 1 actually reduces county funding for mental health. And I quote from the official state voter guide, page 10, quote, shifts roughly $140 million annually of existing tax revenue for mental health, drug, and alcohol treatment from counties to state. So how can the board support giving away the money county money spends on the state? So we're supposed to take it away from the dedicated county employees and volunteers who do this every single day, the homeless people they have to deal with, and give it to bureaucrats in Sacramento? That makes absolutely no sense. That's part 1. So part 2, first, I think there's general agreement we have a housing crisis that at its root is driven by a lack of supply. And that's at least partially the result of government restrictions. I know of at least 500 housing units in North County that developers had spade ready but were shut down by local governments. And so when the supply is restricted, the price goes up, and it's unaffordable. So part 2 wants us to get further into increase the deficit with between $34 billion and $68 billion by $10 billion over 10 years to have the state build things. Now, have you ever heard of Ash Street in San Diego? The state is lousy. State governments are lousy. Local governments are lousy at real estate transactions and building things. Now, if you have the contractors build it, you get a couple of other things. When they build it, you're going to end up increasing the revenue from the property tax, and oh, by the way, they're going to have to pay tax on the rent. And the developers will use the return of their investment to build more housing. So having the state build a bunch of housing projects that'll be like Greeny Green in Chicago and end up being slums, it has no appeal at all. And fourth, if you make housing more affordable by increasing supply.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Luckett. As a supporter of sound fiscal and drug policies, I echo Supervisor Anderson's warning of the dangers and permanent compromises to which Prop 1 will expose the county's behavioral health challenges. Though the state and the county's emphasis has transitioned from primary prevention to harm reduction and treatment, it is important to consider that harm reduction and treatment are reactive strategies that do not address root causes. Harm reduction and treatment are expensive and both carry a high rate of recidivism. For those under 18, the National Institutes of Health estimates the wait lists are 28 days, cost $878 per day, and $26,000 per month. Preventing drug use makes far more sense economically and socially. Further, California's 23-24 budget deficit was $32 billion, and it is projected to be $68 billion in the year 2024 to 25. That fiscal irresponsibility needs to be addressed, not sustained with increased funding. Rebuilding California's mental health system sounds like yet another county proposition that is virtuous in name only. Please oppose this Proposition 1. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator, and I'd just like to say that I believe mental health funds should stay local, and our county should have the authority over how to allocate that money, not Sacramento. And I also believe that more money needs to be spent on primary drug use prevention efforts. As others today have noted, substance use can cause and exacerbate mental health issues, and that includes the use of marijuana by adolescents, teens, and young adults. Today's marijuana is not the same as it was 20 years ago. Many youth are vaping marijuana that's 80 or 90% pure THC, and that is known to exacerbate mental health problems and sometimes be a primary cause of cannabis-induced psychosis. So we need to be paying more attention to that. Substance use disorders are considered a pediatric onset disease because most people with SUD begin using substances before they are 18 years of age. So please pay attention to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. I think it's extremely important to make sure that we kind of take a minute and really think about, how we got here, because if you think about, it was in 1967, right, that California shut down many of the state hospitals for people with severe mental health care challenges, and it didn't adequately fund community-based mental health care services. As a result, it wasn't until 2004, right, that we had the Mental Service Act. And really what that was going to do is expand and transform California's behavioral health care system, serving individuals. And it went into effect in 2005, really focusing on expanding county health care services, really focus on recovery. And so I think it's, as we're looking at Prop 1, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague who introduced this initiative, because I think I want to make sure she's able to inform all of you of why she's introducing this. I think it's extremely important to make sure that we put into context that for a long time, MHSA has been stable funding for counties and has allowed us to maintain current levels of service. When the bill, AB 531 and SB 326 came up, I think most of you know I'm your representative on California State Association of Counties. There was a lot of discussion, and I think it's really important to note that we took deep dives about what this means and really thinking about, and I commend Governor Newsom for really thinking about how we modernize the mental health care system. And behavioral health has been a top priority for us as a county. But as we look at this proposition and the funding and where things were, I think we're in a place where we need to really think about how we stabilize, and particularly how we focus on ensuring that we are able to have more healthcare treatment facilities and be able to support those with substance abuse. And I think one of the things that is very healthy for government that we don't do enough, right? I spoke at the regional task force, particularly around homelessness, and we all accepted and adopted. We're doing an assessment right now about where our homeless, unsheltered funds are going, and we're going to come back and get a report from our county team. That's exactly what we need to be doing as a county and the work that we're doing as moving forward. And so it is my belief that Proposition 1 will be able to help us as we're moving forward and get additional dollars. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, and then I'll make additional comments because I want to make sure she's able to introduce the initiative.
Thank you, Chairwoman, for all your support and leadership on this matter. As you mentioned, the Mental Health Services Act was passed 20 years ago to fund behavioral health. But the way that we treat mental health and addiction has evolved. It's not the same today as it was back then. And we now know that the old way is no longer the right way. So 3 years ago, our county began taking unprecedented steps to build a better behavioral health system locally. We've launched 37 mobile crisis response teams, 3 new crisis stabilization units have been built. We've seen a 77% increase in new behavioral health full-time employees. We've helped manage the opening and ongoing production of nearly 900 new shelter beds and safe parking spaces countywide. But as we've made these changes, it's becoming clear every day that we need reform at the state to be able to continue delivering better services. We need more funding, and we need different kinds of funding streams. So thanks to Governor Newsom and the legislature, Proposition 1, Treatment Not Tense, if passed by voters in March, will refocus billions in existing funds. It'll prioritize the individuals that have the greatest mental health needs, are living in encampments and suffering from substance abuse issues. It'll help build over 11,000 new treatment beds and supportive housing. It'll create 26,700 outpatient treatment slots. It'll set aside $1 billion for veteran housing, and it'll recruit and train 65,000 mental health workers. These are critical investments that we need. Given all the work that we've been trying diligently and with great focus and effort to make here locally at the county, I think it's very important for us to express our support because we stand to benefit greatly if Prop 1 passes. So that's why I am asking my colleagues to support this resolution today. And with that, I'd like to make a motion. Thank you.
Happy to second the motion. And I think I'll expand some more, but I'll let my colleagues go ahead and speak. I know Supervisor Desmond, send me a text.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Thanks. I agree. Some of these things being proposed today under Prop 1 are good, but I just don't like the way it's going about it. Treatment Not Tense is a good selling pitch. Basically, Prop 1, it's taking that Behavioral Services Act dollars that were passed in 2004 and rearranging those dollars. However, and giving more of those dollars to the state and decreasing the amount of dollars that are actually coming to the county. When I read the Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst Office, they say that about half of the behavioral health services dollars that are coming to us now will not be coming to us. It's going to be going to the state. So I agree that I think we need more resources for those struggling with addiction, because those struggling with addiction were not part of the Mental Health Services Act, and we really need those dollars for that. I also agree we need more housing and more infrastructure. But I don't believe, we should be, I know it's kind of a hidden tax here as part of this is taking a $6.4 billion loan out that's going to have to be paid back through the general fund of the state. And taxpayers are going to end up paying that back. And $6.4 billion over probably a 30-year loan is going to be about $10 billion. I don't think we need more money to fix our homeless issues. Our problem with homelessness has been policies. It hasn't been there's not enough money. It hasn't been that Californians aren't paying enough in taxes. That's not why we're having homeless issues. We're having homeless issues because of failed policies that basically the state has tied our hands in so many ways that we can't get people into the help they need. So I think the people of San Diego County elected us to make these decisions and not to regulate our control and give most of it to the state. The state now is going to be making broad decisions for every county And we're a lot different than San Francisco, than LA County, than Imperial County. We've got needs that I think really need to be addressed here. They're not going to be the same with the one size fits all. Predominantly the Housing First program that's still in effect. It has to be used every time. I agree it's a tool, but it's not the one size fits all, but it still seems to be in effect if Prop 1 goes into place. Recently, my office was made aware of a North County city that says they will never, ever approve this type of housing again, because unfortunately, there's a few people living in housing that are mentally ill, that have been previously homeless, but some of them are severely mentally ill, and they're not receiving the services that they need, and they can't receive those services due to the policies in place. And again, the nonpartisan legislative analysis also stated that it's going to reduce our funding, county funding, for outpatient services, for crisis response, for prevention services, and suicide services. So this means that several of our existing programs would essentially need to be cut. In this proposal, we're shifting money and setting MSA priorities, taking it away from the counties and giving it to the administration in Sacramento. I don't believe that's the right thing to do. So I agree with some of the direction that Prop 1 is allowing by letting us help more people that have addiction needs, but giving us another tax. If this tax wasn't in there, they just said, hey, we're going to start using the money. We've already spent billions on homelessness, and we've gotten a 22% increase last year. So at the end of the day, this item is not just a $6 billion loan. It's moving away discretionary dollars from the county. It does a couple of good things, but I think the bad outweighs it. And I think we should do the good things in Prop 1. We can do that without having to raise taxes and put the burden back on the taxpayers. Just policymakers should make the right policies to get people into the help they need. Treatment not tense is right. Let's do it. Well, it's policy, not more taxes. Thank you.
Supervisor Anderson? Oh, sorry.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Thank you so much. I'm going to support the item. The bond piece of it and the additional funding for the resources and the infrastructure that we need, I think is very, very important. And we keep running into sort of a brick wall, so to speak, when it comes to having that full continuum of care for folks. So that piece, I certainly, I'm going to support this for that reason. I am interested, though, in some additional perspective on the possible reform and the maybe not responsibility or maybe responsibility the state is taking over based on reducing the amount of funding that is coming to the county. I did also read that in the LAO report, and of course, it's just something I think we need to be aware of moving forward, provided this does pass at the state level, because appreciate the city being here and they're passing a resolution in support of Proposition 1 and also urging the county to do it. But with all due respect to that, the city is in a different position and won't be necessarily losing anything like we could. So I just, I don't know if the chair or vice chair wants to give me additional perspective just on that piece, or I see we have staff in the audience as well, just so I can have an understanding. I just want to be in a position where we're fully advocating for what we need and the system that we are beginning to, the foundation that a newer board with a different vision is building.
Sure, happy to. Dr. McDonald, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to tee up for purposes of the conversation, but I know we have Caroline in the audience, just from a legislative standpoint of what the process would be for us to make sure that we're advocating, and Supervisor, hearing you loud and clear, for ensuring that as things move forward with a bond measure, that we're in a good position to be able to bring as much dollars as possible for the various types of services. But if there's anything that you would like to share.
No specific remarks from me. I would defer to Caroline on the legislative aspect of it. I do think it's important to point out that this is obviously a clear opportunity for infrastructure development and workforce development. We don't know at this point the specific impact in San Diego, and that would be useful to know and would be important to work with the state on. And there are aspects that are challenging that I think that have been brought up, that the current law has about 5% going to state programs, and that'll double to 10%. And there's that loss of funds in our program flexibility may mean that there's less that goes towards programs that draw down federal matches, and that flexibility also might be lost in terms of what's directed by the state in terms of the reprioritization of the programs. But again, that goes back to the opportunity for this infrastructure is, I would say, quite substantial.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's where the challenge is. And I'll defer to our behavioral health services folks to go into any more detail that you might require.
And I think it's important that I think part of the discussion in the initiative in the bill, and then before it actually became an initiative, was this idea that it's that we have to do better, not just do more, right? And I think that was a big piece of the process and the discussion. And I think the other part of it is that the best source of financial support for those with these conditions is really our insurance system, and really thinking about what that looks like for our health plans. And really this component of it is really a bridge to sustainability by covering everyone and making sure that those in need have access to be covered to care. So I think there's a couple of different components to it. And, the other part of it is getting ahead of it now allows us to be at the table, which is what we have been doing from the beginning with our teams, with me as your representative on CSAC, and then at UCC as well. I think there's some power there, and being at the table and making those decisions and saying, these are the things that need to happen. I will also say that, we're very lucky to have someone like Luke leading the efforts on behavioral health across the state. He's the chair. I don't remember the name of the committee. I apologize. But he's leading the efforts, and also Caroline across the state helping us as we were creating this work. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to.
No other comments, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. It's just that we have to continually come back to the table with more work to do about creating even more efficiencies in our own systems if we are going to, do this for the good of course, doing better with a little bit less, or collaborating with the state and the insurance companies and, reimbursement and, all of the things that we're discussing around this system. That seems to be, we have to do that concurrently to what, to this. We should do it regardless, but if it passes, we certainly will be in a position to have to do that. And so I appreciate that additional perspective. As we build the infrastructure, I think we just have to make sure we have the people that will staff. I know we've been working on that as well, but, we don't want to build out things to become really stale institutions that essentially are locking people up. And so just thinking about that too, my last question just is, and this can be answered offline too, but I would like to know, just based on if this does pass, because I really do think it will. I think this is of heightened awareness across the state, right? Would we have any projects at the county that would maybe be shovel-ready or primed for this type of funding? I would love to just get a sense of that as well.
So I won't speak to if anybody else wants to add, but I think that, one of the big programs that we launched this last year was the Leave No Veteran Behind, right? And, happy to share that out of the 800 folks that were unsheltered, 300 plus are officially permanently sheltered now. And so I think that reflects the need for it's not only the mental health component, but you need a home. Like, you need to have that shelter, right? If you don't have a place to live, it's hard to have the continuum of care that you need. And I think this is what Prop 1 really does. It really helps people to integrate that part of it. And it's so important because I think what all of us have been doing as a board, we've prioritized behavioral health, and there's meal piecing happening, right? Because we don't have those resources to really think about, and I go back to this idea that there are no state hospitals, and we have this conversation, Supervisor Desmond.
Are they going to take that 5% to build more states?
Yeah, right? And so we've talked about what does it look like so that people can actually get the services that they need, and we go back and forth, and I think this will allow for much more creativity and opportunity for us to do some of that work. But I don't know if anybody wants to.
But it is a very specific question. Do we have anything right now at the county, just being here a month and a half, just trying to wrap my brain around this, but that we could utilize those infrastructure dollars on? Do we have anything that is primed, that is ready, or that is even close to that?
Thank you for the question, Supervisor. So the spirit of the bond measure is primarily around moving people into less restrictive care settings, so kind of moving people from acute care into long-term care. That's definitely a thing that we have emphasized. I would note that we have brought a couple of kind of preliminary plans before this board and have done, sort of some exploration of board-in care expansion in a couple of different, both in the East region and also in the central region of this county in particular. That's the kind of work that I think this measure sort of imagines supporting.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm asking for a lot of briefings on the dais, but I will ask for another one. We'll follow up on those projects in particular. Thank you.
Perfect. Supervisor Anderson, and then I'll go to Supervisor Lawson-Weimer, and then Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot of good things in this. And I was really torn when I represent my district, and you all represent your own district, and I respect your ability to represent your district. And we all have different experiences. I spent 12 years in the legislature on the mental health caucus. And I couldn't help but reflect on education. And the reason why I bring up education is I'm old enough to remember that when we had the state lottery, they said all the money's going to go to enhance education. And when I first got elected, people said, well, there's no extra money to our schools. What happened to that lottery money? So I did some research. What I learned was every dime of that money, as promised, went to schools. And every dollar that came from the general fund was reduced by the equal amount. So we had a net neutral. While the funding source changed, the outcome did not change. When I look at this and I see a 10% clawback by the state, when I see that they're going to increase 30% housing cost on us at the expense of our youth mental health programs, we have the same dollar amount, but now my district is not going to have the same level of resources. I'm not against the housing, I'm for it. I spent all my career advocating for it. In fact, at one point in my career, I got $200 million in a bond through the state, not bond, but through the state, for mental health services here in San Diego County. And I also would be remiss if I didn't do a shout out to Nathan Fletcher. When Nathan got on this board, there was a fundamental change, and I was eager to get elected to this board to be his wingman because I shared his vision for providing better and more mental health services and increase the quality of life for my constituents. And I don't accept the status quo. I would increase taxes if I thought I'd get a better outcome. If I could get a quantifiable outcome that changed fundamentally the lives of people in my district for the positive, I'm not opposed to it. So you don't hear me making a tax argument on this. But this isn't going to improve my district. It's going to hurt my district. Now it's going to force us to spend money in areas that may not be the highest and most need. And when I think about the youth programs that we have, and how when you catch a young person and you're able to help them through mental health and get them on a path of prosperity and norm, you've just avoided putting another person on the streets homeless. You just avoided a much greater cost to both them, their family, and to our society. So I can't in good conscience support this while I agree with 90% in it, only because it sets us back. It doesn't move us forward. This should be value added, but this pits multiple vulnerable communities against each other for the same dollar funding. It does not increase the funding at all. And I look back to my years in the state legislature, and just in the last 15 years, our state budget tripled. In a 15-year period, it's more than tripled. And yet our roads aren't improved, our schools aren't fully funded, and mental health has not been addressed. I don't want to spend more money that's clawed back by the state. I want a partner in the state that looks to improve outcomes and not make excuses. For 12 straight years I was up there, and perhaps I was part of the problem. They kicked the can over and over and over down the street, never truly addressing the issues that are fundamental to the people I represent. So for that reason, and I appreciate everyone representing different districts, and we all have our own sets of experience, but for that reason, I won't be supporting this today. However, I will continue to advocate for mental health, for housing, for all the things that we agree with on this board, because our county deserves it. And one of the other points, and I meant to make this earlier, and I apologize for regressing, but over the last 3 years, our county has led the charge. We have counties that have done nothing. And for them, forcing them into this housing situation, forcing them to spend money on behavioral health is a good thing. And maybe for 90% of the state, it's a good thing. But for my district, we're going to lose services, and we're going to be mandated into things that may not be our highest priority. Again, I appreciate bringing this forward. Listen, I supported the Care Court. This governor's done a lot of good things. This shouldn't be partisan in any way, shape, or form. This should be about how we best address needs of our districts and our community. And for that reason, I won't be supporting it today. Thank you.
Supervisor Desmond?
Oh, thanks. I thought you were going to Tara first. But I just would like to kind of add, I know we, as my colleague says, we represent districts, but I don't think this is a district-by-district solution. This has got to be countywide solutions is what we're doing. And if all the homeless went to one of our districts, it's still negatively affect everybody. So I would like to point out, as Supervisor Monica Stepp had mentioned, is there anything ready or anything like that? I got to let you know, I'm looking at it for those ARPA dollars for a board and care site, many acre site in urban North County for a sober living board and care site there. And I think it'd be wise to use the ARPA dollars that we've already got to purchase that land. But I would like to say that the Mental Health Services Act dollars that we currently get, I learned the other day that our crisis stabilization units, our CSUs, which we're very proud of, and we're happy to have them. I got 3 up in North County, which I'm very happy about. But those are funded with mental health service dollars through that act. Those dollars are going to be reduced by the state. So right now, I guess my understanding is we pay 30% of the cost for the crisis stabilization units, and the federal government matches us with 70%. Well, if that pot gets lower for the Mental Health Services Act, things like the crisis stabilization units, well, maybe we'll still fund those, but something else is coming off. That pot is shrinking, and I really think the discretionary portion of these dollars should be left to the counties, as in all, 58 counties are all unique and have different needs. And anyway, it's unfortunate we're going to get a Sacramento one-size-fits-all again, but I appreciate the extra time, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so, I think just to wrap this up for me, from day one, prioritizing healthcare in our communities was a top priority, and I think it's important as we're moving forward that mental health continues to be, mental health care is health care, and we need to find the resources to be able to address this. And the governor came to our particular center and where he announced that this was moving forward because I think he understands that we have been leading the efforts when it comes to the changes that need to happen in behavioral health. And so, for me, I think it's really important that we do support this initiative because there is a broad coalition of, healthcare providers, first responders, veterans, families, and supporters that really believe that this is the right direction and the right time for our county. And so we'll continue to stay on top of it and ensure that the resources come to San Diego as we continue to move forward and address one of the greatest needs that our communities have had. So with that, can you please call the vote?
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Sadly, no.
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
No.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
That motion passes with Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
The next item on our agenda, why am I losing it here? Is our board committee reports. At each meeting, I ask every one of our colleagues to give a brief update on reports and progress and share pertinent information during this time. And so I wanted just to check to see if anybody has any updates. Nope. Okay, the only thing that I will share with folks, and like I mentioned, I think I mentioned this last time, but as chair of SANDAG, we're looking into the issue of the tolls and the impact that is having on our communities, particularly those that have been participating in the toll usage. And so we're taking a deeper dive to make sure that there's accountability and transparency. And so I invite folks to come to our board meeting on Friday to continue to hear the updates. And then I've also asked Caltrans to provide an update of some of the impacts that the rain had in our communities and look at what else we can do as cities that are coming together in unincorporated areas as we move forward. With that, I'll go over, I'll turn it over to the clerk for non-agenda public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 10 remaining requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 3 in person and 7 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak by phone, please dial in to the conference line using the instructions provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. I'd like to invite forward Mark, Paul the Bold, and Consuelo. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I will ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Paula Bold. On September 18, 1787, Elizabeth Willing Powell, the influential daughter of mayors, asked Ben Franklin, "What have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" And Ben responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." Many people and politicians seem to not know, or perhaps strategically forgot, the definition of republic. It comes from Latin, the res publica, meaning the public thing. The public needs to be involved at all levels, beginning to end, and not after you have formulated and pre-selected the answers or made the check boxes to control our creativity or chosen the people to direct our dialogue. And by the way, speak of directing, some of you may even be blocking email selectively, which is really, really not good. Speak of Nazis. The last 3 years of COVID, if not previous actions, have amply demonstrated what lies, misinformation, false mandates, and ridiculous orders you have perpetrated on us. Our eyes are opened. So my question to you is, do you want to keep gaming the people, feeding us lies and misinformation, ignoring us, or do you want to leave the republic? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mark, well, with 13, you literally have committed the highest treason possible in the United States of America. And you know, I actually had at least 20 minutes since you guys passed that to think about it. And I actually can't think of anything that is a higher treason than trying to disarm the United States of good rifles. I'm very disappointed in you, Monica, because your constituents, some of the people that will pay for this the worst, and this is already happening here in California, are black people in poor areas, and the criminals, of course. Please hear this. I'm not against you. Okay. The criminals, the first thing they did, the first day that 3D printing came out, is get all the programs for the best guns in the world. They're printing them as a business, black market, 24/7. They're probably paying a little 12-year-old kid pizzas and more than minimum wage to print them all day long. And their guys come by and distribute them. And they're making more labs or whatever print places everywhere. You're not going to stop them. What you have stopped is especially the poor people in the poor areas, or anyone in California illegally, from defending themselves. What are you going to do with a 10-round clip when 3 guys with 50-round clips and the best guns in the world, who are total murdering criminals, come into your family's house? You're not going to be able to handle it. Not only that, this paves the way for government tyranny beyond anything you could imagine. And if you can't see with the cameras and 5G and the digital currency that we're becoming exactly like China. In fact, China wasn't this bad 40 years ago. They didn't have cameras everywhere, okay? And the only reason we can speak freely is because no one listens or does anything, and no one even knows about your meeting. Please reconsider.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I've got to say, get better, Dan.
You just wished him well. God. Okay. Here's another example, Consuelo. Here's another example how this local government continues to work against its own citizens. Just last Tuesday, Chula Vista City Council, minus Mayor McCann, decided to vote against their own constituents and opted to okay a 5G cell tower be put in a residential neighborhood, in spite of its residents' worries and concerns. We know the side effects of radiation by now. Many people don't even use microwaves in their own homes anymore due to concerns of radiation, let alone want a giant wireless cellular device in their own backyards. This radiation weapon will be installed right next door to a school within 100 feet of another's residence. 5G produces millimeter waves, so they don't travel as far as and therefore are being installed everywhere. The service connection isn't the issue, though. People's service is not the problem. Greed is the problem. Disrespect and disregard for human life is the problem. I guarantee if the tower goes up, so will cancer rates, heart problems, and all sorts of other health issues with this community. Many aren't aware that it's even going up. Shame on Nora's corrupt friends like Cardenas, Preciado, Gonzalez. Also, shame on any of you who have faith in Trump. Guess why? March 2018, Trump signed into law a bill, a $1.3 trillion spending bill that included measures to speed up the deployment of 5G, $600 million of which would be used to ensure that 5G not only be in cities, but in rural areas as well. It was the Trump administration that had this plan move forward. Are you getting it yet? Red, blue, the illusion? 5G has no business being placed near families. Where's the outrage? Where's the media? This is actual news to be reporting on, not junk stories of how corrupt politicians are.
Thank you. Your time is up. Now we'll hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Afternoon.
Since October 7, the Israeli government has killed more than 25,000 Palestinian civilians in Gaza, more than 10,000 of them children. More than 62,000 Palestinians have been injured, the majority of them women and children, and thousands more are missing under the rubble. The entire 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza face catastrophic hunger, as Israel is using starvation as a weapon. We cannot continue pretending this genocide is not happening. This country is home to Jewish residents and Palestinians, as well as Arab residents of all religions. For the last 3.5 months, we have watched on a daily basis through our cell phones graphic, brutal, and inhumane imagery of this genocide of the Palestinian people at the hands of the Israeli government. Why does the county of San Diego, the 5th largest county in the U.S., continue to remain silent when other major California cities, including Oakland and San Francisco, have called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza? This is supported by a majority of Americans and a majority of the world's nations. I implore you to ask yourselves, what legacy do you want to leave behind? One that prioritizes your strategy for your re-election campaign, business relationships, ego, or one that prioritizes human beings, human rights for all, standing up for justice to allow for peace to thrive. I urge this board to pass a resolution to call for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. We cannot wait any longer.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
So, yeah, you guys are on board of supervisors and the city council. Can you believe it? Are you guys both going to give me minutes at the same time? So the fact that we're doing you guys have violated your, I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. So you guys violated your fee contract today many times with all of the things that you have put in place. But, you know, we'll see if you continue to do that. And it's very sad to see that you guys sit here and you act like you're sitting here helping the people, and in reality you're taking total control over all of the things that they have the ability to live freely with. And I don't even know what I'm saying right now. Why am I doing 2 meetings at one time? This is ridiculous. But the fact that we're also declaring an emergency, and because then we can get money. And like I was just saying to the city council, so I'm going to be repeating myself. You know, we're modifying the weather. There are weather modifying projects that are going on that you don't ever want to acknowledge. There's cloud seeding that makes these storms happen, and then you guys can benefit from declaring it an emergency. But we sit here and we put people in tents, we put them out on the streets in that kind of a condition, and then, leave them into a place where they're going to lose everything that they have, which is pretty much nothing, but potentially get sick because they are put in, severe weather conditions where they're going to be soaking wet for who knows how long. So my time ended on the city. Anywho, yeah, so it's just, and the fact that you guys want to even spray Roundup and different things that are, affecting the people and their health. Oh, I don't even know what I'm saying, but it's just good to be able to bring up things that you guys don't want to acknowledge, like the fact that we want to have human health settlements, to take control over everything, give smart growth, have smart growth and smart meters and all of this stuff, when in reality all it's doing is ensure that the people know.
Thank you. For the record, the speaker is Audra and Chairwoman Vargas. That concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this afternoon. Before the board adjourns to closed session, I'd like to invite the speakers that requested to speak on closed session matters. We have 5 speakers, 3 in person, 2 requesting to speak by phone. For those individuals that requested to speak on closed session matters, which is item 16 by phone, please dial into the conference line. I'd like to invite forward Truth, Mark, and Consuelo. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. And I'll ask you to state your name for the audio record. Thank you.
This Truth case B is Ronald Gadsden versus former Deputy Michael McGrath. Ronald alleges that in 2019, after he made a formal complaint about his arrest that led him to George Bailey, he was denied a scheduled video visit. Allegedly asked for another complaint form and was denied again. Ronald alleges he was punished with about a week in solitary confinement, where he was denied clean clothing, a shower, and outside contact. Michael McGrath has since resigned as a deputy, but is still represented by taxpayer-funded county lawyers. Case C&D is Whitney Antrim and Kenan Golton versus the county. Wife and husband public defenders Whitney and Kenan are suing the county, alleging that Whitney was forced to resign after planning on testifying in support of a colleague's claims of sexual harassment. It's alleged that Deputy Public Defender Troy Britt threatened Whitney's career. Whitney's husband Kenan said he had to quit after facing bullying and retaliation. Whitney said, quote, "The toxic workplace endures to this day and no change has been made despite the verdicts against them. Multiple whistleblower complaints and ethical complaints. It remains the same and morale is falling by the day. Attorneys have left in droves," end quote. Last year, 2 former public defenders were awarded millions for discrimination. In case G, it seems like a bunch of people joined in conspiracy for a multi-jurisdictional lawsuit against multiple big banks, alleging that they conspired to suppress the London Interbank offered rate, making the banks appear healthier than they were, and manipulating interest rates. I chalk that up to an argument about money by conspirators against conspirators and a financial system based on fraud. Sewers include the County of San Diego, Sandag, Riverside County, Sacramento County, Mendocino County, San Mateo County, the City of New Britain, Connecticut, the City of Richmond, Philadelphia, Houston, the Mayor of Baltimore, Yale University, and even the Purple Shirts. But if any of those entities win, what will they do with the taxpayer money they unwisely invested with? This is kind of how I feel. I think this sums up my feelings about it.
I take offense. I take offense to that. I really take offense to that. I find that very offensive.
We just have to end on fun. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Speaking on litigation. Consuelo, speaking on litigation and repeals. So again, shame on Nora and your corrupt friends like Cardenas, Preciado, Gonzalez. And I said, shame on the people who have faith in Trump due to his, the bill that he passed and signed. What was I going to say? It was, okay, yeah. So again, it was the Trump administration that had this plan move forward. Question, are you getting it yet? Red, blue, the illusion. 5G has no business being placed near families. Where's the outrage? Where's the media? This is actually news to be reporting on, not junk stories of how corrupt politicians are being targeted at meetings. Hello. No wonder they're being targeted. They do not listen to the people. They use the media to extend their gaslighting and corrupt behavior. We can't even trust the media to report the truth. So get involved, San Diego. This local corrupt government relies heavily on your lack of concern and involvement.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Here, you can take it 10 seconds. Mark, a San Diego judge cited the self-defense potential and landmark gun rights decision by the Supreme Court in his ruling against the prohibition of assault weapons in California. So you guys have opened yourself up to litigation on that. That's already been ruled about. Obviously wrong. These are all videos on either YouTube, BitChute, or Rumble. And I invite all of you, especially anyone who's new, to go to one of these websites. They're all like YouTube. And check out these video titles that will, of course, be on YouTube online under County San Diego website, under live at the top on the right. So this one is a letter from Beatrice Golem, the most reputable PhD head researcher in 5G radiation, who warned the BOS Council here, the supervisors here, and the state of California not to do it, that it was very dangerous radiation. And she's still at UCSD. This is not someone retired from the past. She's one of the greatest researchers in this field. Here's some, all these are titles of YouTube videos, or they might be on BitChute. Most of them are on YouTube. Since I'm not going to have time here, I'm just going to have to display them for you to check out later. And I highly recommend you do. I think many of you would have differing opinions if you knew some of the things that I know. And these are not right-wing conspiracy theory things. These are your own stories by your own experts. They're undeniable, and it makes for a totalitarian society. So, oh, by the way, what you should have done, new gun laws won't be enforced by Sutter County Sheriff's Office. You see, the sheriff has the right to not enforce unconstitutional laws in his area and to keep feds out.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individual that requested to speak by phone.
Oh my gosh, I wonder if you guys want to put me in a mental home because I'm mentally splitting just to go to 2 meetings at one time. Anywho, yeah, so all of this litigation, all this stuff is going to come from the people's pocket, right? And it's like the heart failure guy at the jail who died because of the negligence. I mean, we already saw this. And, I mean, you know, it's not like we're going to do anything there. You guys got to get rid of people, so it's good. And then, you know, a sheriff violating a First Amendment right. That never happened. Oh, my gosh, that is unheard of, right? And not retaliating or anything by, like, beating them up. So I'm sure that retaliating for a request of an internal affairs complaint form was a bit much, right? It's like, I mean, they're just really going all out and just trying to retaliate against anything instead of doing their job. And then the fact that we have a husband and wife who have been harassed for trying to just speak out about something that's going on. It's like we want to have all of these people come in and be like, you can, you know, let us know what's going on. We're not going to retaliate, except for on Sandag. Isn't that what happened? Is that why you're bringing forward the toll road shenanigans? I mean, and why you're looking at it, right? Because somebody brought it forward. It was in the press. Oh, my gosh, that's the only thing we can really address stuff. But, I mean, gosh, if there's sexual harassment going on in the office and somebody tries to, you know, bring that up, it's like, I mean, they may as well be sexually assaulted or harassed as well, right? Just to silence them and get them to leave the job. And now the people are going to have to pay for all of this crap. It's ridiculous because then when the people actually want to be protected, do we have that? No, we don't. We don't have the option to do that. We got to come out of our own pocket, even though just, you know, if you pay us back, like if I were to get a settlement for being assaulted, it's just going to come out of our own pockets. It's like, I'm going to pay myself just to be assaulted. It's good, right? Oh, gosh. I mean, and the whole fraud and manipulation for this antitrust litigation. Everything you guys do is so corrupt.
Thank you, and Chairwoman Vargas. That concludes public comment on the closed session matters.
All right. So with that, the session is adjourned. We'll now proceed to closed session. We're going to start at 3:30.
The board will now recess into closed session to consider those matters listed under item 16 on today's regular agenda. If there are any reportable actions, they will be reported out during the planning and land use session of this meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, January 24th, 2024.
I'm sorry.
3:30? Is that what I heard?
Yes.